Hi, I'm Nick Paulson and you're watching News 24 Live. I'm joined in studio by Sport 24 editor Garen Lamley and chief writer Rob Howing to discuss the Currie Cup final and other rugby matters. Of course, the Springbok touring squad has just been selected. Gents, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Nick.
Hello, Nick.
I believe there was a little bit of a disagreement between the two of you of how the Currie Cup final would end up. Should we discuss
we all know who won that particular battle this weekend, and I'm going to take credit, of course. Called it for Western Province. I've got to admit, I did so very uncomfortably, as I said, Nick. But and the final did turn out to be incredibly ding dong. I mean, Garen must have been absolutely cursing Marnitz Boshoff's sort of very rare sort of failures off the tee. I guess he sort of struggled to cope with the old Cape Doctor, and the place kicks were sort of going left, right, and everywhere but through the sticks for the Lions. But they do say that Currie Cup finals are won on chances taken, and you've got to say that Western Province took all the chances that came their way, pretty much, and certainly with Dimitri Katrakilis, by stark contrast to Marnitz Boshoff. And Combrink as well. He was dead eye off the kicking tee, which in the end made a crucial difference. But I thought it was a very fitting Currie Cup final, even without lots of key Springboks. A very high quality game that would have impressed, I think, a lot of neutrals who might have been watching it worldwide. Good advertisement for South African rugby. Played in very good spirit, I think just overall a very happy occasion between clearly the two best sides that we saw in Currie Cup rugby this year.
Garen, of course, a lot of the talk last week was about it seemed to favour the Lions, the result. Right. A lot of talk about the scrum, but Western Province seemed to hold up really well in that department. Like Rob said, Katrakilis, there was question marks over was he the preferred fly half. He had a fantastic game. So I mean, Western Province really came to the party.
Yeah, they certainly stepped up. I still think the Lions had the advantage at scrum time. I think they were awarded 5 full-on penalties, not all of which turned into points, but they still dominated, not as much as I thought they might. But they still held sway there for sure, even amongst the forwards. The Province defence, really stepped up on the day. They held the Lions out. There were a number of attacking scrums for the Lions that I thought, okay, this is it. This is where they're going to score. This is where they're going to go ahead. Because they certainly, 13-0 down, then they came all the way back to 13-0 at one point. I thought that momentum was with them. I thought they were going to run out winners, break the hearts of the Cape Town faithful. But it wasn't to be. I feel a little bit sorry for Marnitz Boshoff. Obviously, he missed, I think, 4 kicks, 2 drop goals, 18 points. Had he landed all those like Katrakilis did, the match wouldn't have been close, on the scoreboard. Obviously, difficult to say if Province would have then changed their game plan. But, obviously now fingers have been pointed at him. He's subsequently hasn't been included in the Springbok squad. Maybe Heineke may looking at his kicking form. So, that's something to obviously remember when one looks at the closeness of the match. Province were defending right at the end. It came down to another one of these kicks in the dying seconds, which has decided tests this year, the Super Rugby final. Had it gone over 19-0 into extra time, anything could have happened. So a narrow win, but Province perhaps on the season, looking at the way that they dominated the round robin, dominated the semi-finals, got the home final. Perhaps they should have were worthy winners in the end. But a fantastic Currie Cup season. Without all the Springboks, as Rob says, I think it made for a fantastic spectacle.
Rob, Alistair Coetzee, no doubt, will be holding on to his job, and you could see after the final whistle how much that win meant to him and the players and the coaching staff.
Absolutely, you could see he and his sort of closest lieutenants, Robbie Fleck and Matt Proudfoot, getting into a victory huddle at the moment that final whistle went. As you say, they were sort of unusually animated. It really did mean a lot. Look, let's face it. A few months ago, they were really under the cosh. All 3 of them. They're sort of Western Province the Stormers rather had a pretty terrible by their standards Super Rugby campaign. They finished 11th and 3rd in the South African Conference, and let's not forget that the South African Conference was pretty ordinary. So that was a very poor outcome, and they were under intense pressure. But the whole catalyst to change really was Gert Smal obviously coming in as director of rugby. That in itself was obviously already a kick up the sort of proverbial posterior, I suppose, for the existing coaching staff, and saying, you will now comply with a new boss, and it's now a question of whether you buy in or not. And to their credit, you've got to say, clearly they have. I mean, they are good rugby men. They're consummate professionals. I think we can't really dispute that. And they did sort of buy into Gert Smal's philosophy, and then implemented it very skillfully, because there was a complete shift. There was a total mindset change in Western Province rugby, and during the Currie Cup, the crowd started to flock back in. We got 45,000 for the final, which was, as much as anything, also a great indication of how the excitement factor came back into Western Province rugby. The vital thing now, I suppose, will be especially for Alistair Coetzee. He really will be under pressure now going into a new Super Rugby season to, I would think, at least ensure a semi-final status for the Stormers. Yeah. So it's not as though he's completely off the hook, but he certainly is for the time being, and fair cop for that.